Hello. Welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. There's nothing wrong with your picture. I am indulging myself a little bit in the benefits of living across the hall from a technophile and enjoying my favorite color a little bit. It does actually pertain to today's topic. A little bit, but enough of that. Office lights white. And then there is the ring light, almost too bright at this point, right? I was in a kind of a state after the last 3 weeks of stuff. I don't particularly enjoy reviewing things that I don't enjoy reading, and Spelljammer just kind of got in my craw. So I was thinking, man, is there anything that can take my mind out of this? Is there something that can give me a funny story or something outrageous or something? What day is it? Oh, that's right, it's Wednesday, and it's D&D night, and the Warriors of Wednesday did not disappoint me. Because I got a story to tell that's a little bit. It has to do with a number of my passions in D&D and things going off the rails. Yet again, this does tend to happen. So this is, man, I can't even. I'll get there. I'll get there. Regular Wednesday night D&D game. The group is playing paladins. Everyone's playing a paladin. There's a couple of multi-classes. There's a paladin artificer and a paladin monk. The wildly different individuals in the group. A couple of humans near a cockroach. Got one of them as an undead. A skeleton, basically, wrapped in chainmail. The Warforged made out of a pipe organ, which is just the most fun ever. There are kobold monk, the one with the kobold monk paladin, serving Ilmater. It's a good group, nice and varied, and they get along pretty well. And they'd been through a pretty hard investigative slog through a mysterious city that is apparently run by a mind flayer. Turned out not to be a mind flayer, it's just squidling, or what happens when a mind flayer tries to convert a gnome into a mind flayer and it doesn't go well. Often when that happens, not only is there a lot of physical deformation, but the resulting being remembers the gnome that they were much more than anyone else who goes through cereomorphosis is going to remember the person they used to be before a mind flayer converted them. So they did their nice poking around, investigating, looking around. None of the characters are good at this. None of the characters are in their element doing the investigative thing. So they got their dungeon. They got to go under the well where there is a labyrinth. Now, I did not prep for the labyrinth as much as I probably should have. I went online and looked for maps. I use a virtual tabletop called Owlbear Rodeo. Owlbearrodeo.com. I highly recommend it. It is a free open source virtual tabletop, and it it's not very fancy, but it has an elementary set of tools that seems to work just fine for us. A little clunky at times, but it gets the job done. And I went online and looked for a dungeon map. Just every so often, you gotta pull a map from online. I found some pretty good stuff, and because it's not for public consumption, I feel that it's out there to be used. So I grabbed a good-looking labyrinth map. I'll see if I can put a link to the artist in the description, because their stuff just looks really, really nice. The only problem with it, though, was that it was very green. Very green. It was all sewery, swampy, mossy, dingy green. And my vision for the labyrinth the party would find themselves in. It was a little bit more ethereal, a little bit more astral. Something that mind flayers had built it. It was a construction that they were using for purposes. So I took the map into Photoshop, and it was a relatively simple operation. I adjusted the image by sliding and hitting the hue, saturation, and brightness filter, and dragged the hue lever over until everything that was green turned blue. I like blue. Blue is one of my favorite colors. And so there they are in this blue dungeon. Now, the map included some great little details, little bits of rocks and little bits of places where the swamp water was leaking in from the bottom. And so there were these pools of green and these lighter green rocks. And well, those turned into blue rocks that, because of how things were shaded, appeared to be glowing a little bit. And then these blue pools, these deep blue pools. There's something I put into D&D more often than I should. And it will occasionally bite me, but I figured, what the heck, let's play with this again. Like, what is blue? What blue rocks and blue pools and just glowing stuff? Why, that if I didn't know better, that's the right shade of blue and the right intensity to be Chernikov radiation. Yeah. It's a radioactive dungeon. It is a dungeon full of little bits of radioactive rock with pools of radioactive liquid. Not so refined and purified that they're going to be a problem that's spread out all over the place in tiny little chunks here and there. It's going to be annoying. Most of the player characters aren't going to be able to get too close to it, but our undead can. It's going to be, everyone else has organic systems that can get interfered with. Even the Warforged, if you read their descriptions in the latest Eberron book, they have a good organic component to them. They function like organic systems. So everyone's got some organics to them except the skeleton. If he was a zombie or something that still had a little bit of flesh left, there might have been an issue, but it takes a lot longer for the bones to be affected by radiation than any other part of the body. So skeleton was going to be fine, within limits. So they start going. So the dungeon's a slog. It is. They've got to travel single file. It is all corridors and right angle turns, with a couple of branches here and there. But the joke has come to be, oh look, it's another angle. They must have had a sail on them. And look, oh, what do you know? Another corner. It's a lot of map packed into that area. And the first thing that happened down there was they ran across an iron golem, which almost wiped the party. But they've been bashing on the iron golem for a while, and a couple of party members have gotten knocked down. One person is in their second set of death saves, having gotten pulled out and then knocked right back down. Everyone in the party's got a wish. Everyone in the party has a wish. They had an encounter with the genie early on. The genie was very grateful because they rescued it from a terrible situation, and so everyone's got a wish. And the Warforged Paladin wishes that the golem worked for them. It's pretty clever. That's like, I like giving everyone a wish, especially early on, because more often than not, a party will get themselves into trouble with a wish. If they've got that wish hanging on you, it's always that option. You don't want to use it because you only got the one, but something dire comes up, and well, you might throw the wish. You're probably going to throw the wish pretty quickly probably without enough thought, and whether that's the player or the character, either way. And these wishes are being adjudicated fairly leniently because the genie that's granting them isn't trying to screw him over with them. He's just very grateful. He's going to interpret them as well as he can. We'll get back to that. So the Iron Golem is now at the back of the party, bringing up the rear and watching their back. And they start encountering the blue rocks. And the kobold did not like the blue rocks because he blew the Constitution save and started to feel itchy and scratchy and hot. And no, didn't want to be near the blue rocks. The blue pools, even worse. Nope. And a few folks tried to, well, can I get near the blue rocks? No. Can I get near the blue rocks? Well, you feel itchy and hot and scratchy. It's not comfortable, but you're there. And like, no, I think I'll back off from that. That doesn't seem right. The undead's like, can I get near the blue rocks? Of course you can. Yeah, you're fine. It's just a blue rock. And when you present something like that to certain kinds of players, thank God the player of our undead paladins or gray silverwood or something, a couple of colors, both of them very bland. When starts asking, well, can I handle it? Of course you can. Is it malleable a little bit? Oh, it's a little malleable. It's soft like lead, I suppose. Yeah, you can. Can I bite it? I'm not going to tell you not to bite the rock. Sure, you can bite the rock. Can I eat it? Well, you're a skeleton wrapped in chainmail, so you can bite down on it, and the chunk that results in your mouth will tumble down the inside of your chainmail and hang out around your legs and boots because the chainmail is tucked into the boots, so you're going to it's going to be down there somewhere. So, as they came to areas of the dungeon where there was more rocks than was comfortable for the rest of the group, our undead paladin would solve this problem by eating them all. Just grabbing handfuls of radioactive rocks and packing them down his gullet, and there'd be a rattle like a pachinko game, and well, rocks in his shame. He starts to glow. There's a little blue disco-like glow as the glow of the rocks starts to shine through the chainmail. So he's got these little points of light wherever he's at. It's kind of fashionable, kind of fancy. This is not a good thing. And I'm not so much counting the rounds. I don't have a good calculation of what's going to happen, but I start thinking about this like, well, what happens when you take a whole bunch of radioactive rocks and put them all in the same place? That is the simplest explanation of how you make a nuclear bomb that I can possibly give you. And yet it's not refined. So there just have to be just this huge amount of them. Like as much as you can stuff into more than you can stuff into a suit of armor. But then you remembered you had a bag of holding. Here's another question for you. So he starts just shoveling gobloads of these rocks every time he finds them. And I start looking around the map that I'm using. It's like, how much rock? How much would all of this weigh? Because they're obviously using the labyrinth as some kind of a waste disposal area. So this is their dirty rocks, the radioactive stuff they don't want anyplace else in the system. He starts filling his bag of holding with radioactive rocks. He's got a bag of holding full of uranium. Now, things in the bag of holding, they're in another dimension. So that is a safer place to put them technically because they're not radiating stuff outside the bag from the inside. They're radiating absolutely everything inside the bag, but not stuff outside the bag. It is safer technically to have those there. Did I mention that putting a whole bunch of rocks together, of radioactive rocks together in one place, is a simple description of a nuclear device? Yeah. And there comes a point where the party splits up and they get back together again, and one group is in one corridor, and the next corridor over there's our undead paladin with the Warforged. I believe is the only other paladin in that corridor with him. And I ask for a general D20 roll, and it's fairly low. It's like a 3 or 4. And I inform the undead paladin that his pants have just melted. And all of the rocks have spilled out kind of slowly because they're starting to. They were malleable before. Now they're a little Play-Doh-like. They're starting to get more malleable, heating up, getting soft. And that's a bad thing. If you've ever seen if you're familiar with the series Chernobyl or the actual events of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, what our paladin has done is he has made a hefty start on an elephant's foot. It's a molten, massive radioactive material that is just viciously dangerous. It's super radioactive. The Warforged tries to get some control over it, and while he starts to manipulate the mass directly, his richly polished cherry wood hands start to turn gray and lustrous, and lose their luster. Start to look dead in comparison to how his appearance normally is. So he pulls out of there, and they got to work out how to deal with radiation burns on a Warforged. That's a question we get to answer now. That's awesome. And I'm going to take a break here to discuss something that, well, a concept my friend Wayne came up with a while ago. This unconnected, a while ago. Because in Dungeons and Dragons and other systems that have magic in them, it's possible to do things like, there's if you take a portable hole and put it in a bag of holding, you tear open there's an explosion and you tear open a hole to the astral plane or the ethereal plane. Well, it depends on which one you put in the other, but you can't overlap them. But it does suggest that you can overlap solid materials. So you could theoretically have a mass of material in one place and have another mass of material go up in the same place, whether it's a blink spell or some kind of ethereal walk or you've teleported it there. You can overlap mass, which generally is catastrophic. But if you did that with fissionable material, you'd create a very efficient, absolutely devastating nuclear bomb. I remembered this. So did Wayne. This got fascinating. Because we've got the elephant's foot spilling out of the paladin's boots. I get to say a whole bunch of sentences this week that I'm very happy to be able to say. Opportunities like this don't come along very often. So we've got the elephant's foot spilling out of the paladin's boots, and the rest of the armor just falls off. It's the bone structure of our undead skeleton it might get compromised. You can only throw so much radiation to bone before it starts to degrade significantly. And so he's still in the mindset that he's just got to keep it all in one place so it's controlled and not working out. It's like, well, I got the bag of holding. There's got to be some room left in the bag of holding. Probably you're going to take this much of it and put it in the bag of holding. That could get bad, but at the very least, it could buy them some time. As long as you don't damage the bag of holding in the process. Because if you damage a bag of holding enough, everything inside of it comes out of it all at once. Everything inside of it comes out of it all at once. So our undead paladin proceeds to try and scoop the elephant's foot worth of radioactive material coming out of his boots into the bag of holding. And there's a phrase I get to use in a game full of paladins that is always, I can always pretty sure when I use this phrase, something terrible is going to happen. But it was absolutely fair in this situation. You're trying not to damage the bag? Give me a dex save. Man, if you put all of their dex saves together in the entire party, you don't hit double digits. The dex save is not only a failure, it's a disastrous failure. It's pretty close to a 1. It wasn't a 1, but it was pretty close. So the bag of holding gets damaged. And the entire contents of the bag of holding comes out all at once. He was trying to scoop up the radioactive material, and now all of the radioactive material that was already in the bag is coming out in that spot all at once. And now I have described a very effective nuclear bomb. There is no question that what they have managed to do is achieve catastrophic critical mass all at once. We've gone well beyond the demon core here, and we have hit ignition. We are in a chain reaction, and there isn't even a moment to think about it. We take a moment to think about it. We pause. Every paladin there receives a ping in the back of their mind from their god with a little panic. You can't let this happen. Do something. What's the point of being connected to a god if the god can't add to the tension in a situation, right? What do you do? What would you do? You're sitting next to, because the skeleton did manage to throw a blanket around themselves. This is the first revelation to anyone in the party that there's a skeleton underneath all of that chainmail, now underneath the blankets. Only the Warforged saw that, and the Warforged is very cool, and the Warforged's deity is kind of a skeleton himself. It's odd. I'll talk about the dude sometime. But now we've got this skeleton that's just trying to, it's a terrible thing. You've got a moment, and they're paladins. No one specs into intelligence. I think Wayne's character, the paladin artificer, has a decent intelligence, but everyone else is charisma and strength and constitution and not a lick of intelligence between them. And they're just, they look at the rolls they've got to make, and nothing looks like it's going to be sufficient. They're 4th level. They don't have a lot of stuff to throw. Their options are exceptionally limited. Oh, wait. There is one option. And Nalgene, the kobold monk paladin of Ilmater, steps forward and says, I wish all of this stuff was in the lap of whoever's in charge of the Mind Flayers. Parse that for a moment, would you? Because that is a lot. It was a perfectly reasonable. Nalgene is a kobold of noble heart and strong of arm and leg, mighty of fist, fast with his flurries. He's been doing a tremendous amount of damage in combat, but not a thinker. Got very, very frustrated with the town adventure because there wasn't a lot of punching things, and Nalgene's a puncher. His job is to punch evil, so he needed to go where the evil was so he could punch it. Well, so he invokes this wish, which is the most Nalgene wish you could ever have made. Now, thinking that this is being interpreted as favorably as the genie who gave them the wish can, moving all this matter is absolutely within the realm of a wish spell. So, I wish all this stuff. You could interpret that in some terrible, terrible ways. But if you're a creature like a genie and you have some ability to understand the situation in which a wish occurs, it was not difficult to understand all this stuff is the matter in question. And by gesturing expansively, all this stuff was interpreted to be all of the radioactive material in this dungeon. That it's not a huge dungeon. It was going to get them problems wherever they were at. This is all a problem. Make it all go away. All this stuff, all the radioactive material in the dungeon is in the lap of the person in charge of the mind flayers. That's where it gets a little tricky. They haven't identified a faction of mind flayers that is responsible for this. They don't have a limited group of mind flayers from which to place this bomb. You know, who's in charge of that? Is because the first thing you think is, well, maybe it's the elder brain that's in charge of the colony that's running whatever this operation is. But they don't have any knowledge of that. They couldn't be specifying that. So it's got to be whoever's in charge of all the mind flayers. The being in question is known as Il-Sensei, known as the patron deity of mind flayers, evil wizards who use mental domination, and psionicists who dominate the minds of others. Who dwells in the caves under Outland, on another plane, bordering the astral plane, not too far from the city of Sigil. All this stuff in their lap that suggests concentrating the mass. Il-Sensei does not actually have, lap. They're kind of just a brain at this point, but in as close to a lap as a brain has, there's two sides to every nervous connection. There are the far end of the nerves, where the pain receptors are and you trigger the muscles. There's the near end of the nerves, which are inside the brain. So they dropped a nuke in Il-Sensei's brain. A nuke that was in the process of going to critical mass, and they increased that mass tremendously by including all of the radioactive material in the dungeon. All the pools, all the rocks, every little bit everywhere. Anything else that they hadn't noticed that was like that. There was a couple of encounters they hadn't hit yet that were also going to be ruthlessly radioactive. The explosion would be massive. It'd make the Sarabamba look like a firecracker. All of which is over there. As far as the party knows, suddenly the dungeon goes dark. Completely dark. It's not even the dim light they've had before, which tells them that they're lighting their path with ionizing radiation. So that's not good. And most of them have some way to compensate for that, even if it's a torch or a lantern. Now I get to engage in my favorite activity. This is a disaster. This is a disaster of unmitigated proportions for someone else. They offloaded the disaster to another plane of reality and can go about their business in this labyrinth to finish up the adventure. They probably have another session or so in there, because this is the cliffhanger. I'm not spoiling anything. This is all cliffhanger from last game. And they used a wish to drop a nuke. And I am very, very happy to see this happen. Because we now get to sit back and go, okay, so you've nuked the Mind Flayer god. What comes of this when? Ilsensine will get better. They're a deity. They have the infinite regeneration and the capacity for infinite regrowth and serial regeneration, and they'll be fine. Their realm will need some work. Sigil's probably going to have to. There might be some fallout, but there's a problem because Ilsensine, as a goddess Hionesis who keeps in kind of sign of contact with some of their most powerful worshippers, and the death scream of a god getting nuked, even if the god's getting better, that energy, that pain, all of that is transmitted along that network. There's going to be a lot of dead Mind Flayers and a lot of very upset recovering Mind Flayers next to them. And that's going to travel all down the line. Hardy managed to piss off every illithid in the multiverse. That is a feat. That's an achievement. You give him a badge for that. You know, is this going to come back and bite them? And of course it is. Is it going to be tomorrow? No. This is going to take quite some time. For even Ilsensine is going to have to pry open through the veils of time and space, go past dimensions and pry the crap out of this to get the barest hint. Where did this come from? No one was expecting this. The fact that this is all waste that the Mind Flayers themselves had created and were shunting someplace else. This is all poetic justice. And they're paladins. The player characters are paladins. So this is a certain amount of justice that their gods would approve of. It's like, okay, that was kind of funny. So it's not anything that the party needs to worry about immediate repercussion, because it's going to take even the deity that they offended a great deal of time to work out, hey, it was them. And then that deity is going to have to decide, do I want to sick my followers on these people and let them know that a bunch of 4th level paladins on the prime material kicked my ass? No, that's not something they're going to come up with off the top of their brain. There's going to have to be some subtlety. Things are going to take a while. It's going to work into some kind of. They were already up to their knees in illithids with stuff going on, and this particular adventure was kind of meant to close that loop and end things, let them go off in different directions, and it still will for a while. But there's going to be something down the line. And I get to sit back and imagine this entire society of Mind Flayers that has just been rocked to its core, with the elder brains in their colonies suddenly becoming the beacons of fire and heat and death, and getting your atoms scattered to the 4 winds, and the colonies having to scramble to find other ways to manage and their infrastructure, what they can salvage of it. There's going to be disasters. It's going to be some illithids out there with 10mm pistols and NCR helmets. War never changes. Oh man, there's a crossover I hadn't thought about before. Let's work my way into that. All because I liked the green map, but I would have preferred if it were blue. just like critical masses of radioactive material cause a chain reaction, so do artistic choices, and where they can take the imagination and where it takes the imagination of the players, and players who are trying very hard the paladins would have no idea what radioactive stuff was or why it was that way or how dangerous it was or why you shouldn't handle it. But you don't expect the skeleton to stick their arms in it up to their elbows and play with it like it's like glowing Play-Doh. It was awesome. It gave me a scene and stuff that they're going to do. They've got some things they need to deal with. Work out how they're going to heal the damage from this stuff, because it's got to be special damage, because radioactivity is special. I love radiation as a herald in role-playing games. And so there's stuff they got to deal with and stuff down the line. Aside from that, crap, now we got to use torches. Well, thank you for following me along in this particular story. I will probably do some updates on this as things happen, because it's just too good. It's just too good. Taking something that's a fairly small local issue and making it something that spans the planes. At 4th level, that's an achievement. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't enjoy the video, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If there's anything else you'd like to hear me talk about, stories you'd like me to tell, subjects you'd like to hear me cover, leave me a comment down below. I will love getting your comment. You'll love leaving me one. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, why not? My channel is awesome. Hit the subscribe button. And if you do that, you might also want to hit the notification bell so you're alerted when my videos become available. If you would like to contribute to the channel in a more substantial manner, I invite you to hit me up my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/ScottCorum. Consider donating. Absolutely anything helps. Allows me to make better videos more often. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. I'm Scott Corum. This is what it mattered to me. I will see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.